Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. Not all wars are fought in the battlefield, because some wars are also fought at the Oval Office in the White House. The war of words between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky in many ways has decided the course of the Ukrainian war theatre. Donald Trump's message is clear. He wants the Ukrainian wartime president to come back to the Oval Office again only when he's ready to make peace. Volodymyr Zelensky, who in the last 3 years hasn't blinked in the face of relentless military pressure from the Russians, stood his ground despite being berated by Donald Trump and his deputy in the full glare of the world media. But even after this heated exchange, Volodymyr Zelensky expressed hope that Ukraine's relationship with Donald Trump and America could still be salvaged. But something fundamentally has changed, whose consequences will be felt far beyond the Ukrainian front lines. Our next report gets you the details. In the days leading up to his meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky at the White House, Donald Trump had called Zelensky a dictator and blamed Ukraine for starting the war with Russia. But nothing could have prepared Zelensky for what was to play out at the Oval Office.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
You will feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country, that's back to you, far more than a lot of people said they should have.
These 10 minutes of Donald Trump and his deputy berating the leader of another sovereign nation and a close ally to whom the United States had been supplying weapons to blunt the Russian war machine in the full glare of world media will go down in history as the Trumpian mode of doing diplomacy. Donald Trump has a habit of saying the quiet part out loud. But this was a glimpse of how diplomacy is actually done behind closed doors. Accusing Zelensky of gambling with the lives of millions and millions of people, of gambling to start a third world war, and of being ungrateful to the United States of America, Volodymyr Zelensky was sent away without any security guarantees, and without any guarantee that the flow of American money and weapons will be maintained to keep the Russian onslaught in check. One European leader after another jumped to Zelensky's defense. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was quick to tweet that the Ukrainians can still rely on Germany and Europe. French President Emmanuel Macron commented that those who were helping Ukraine resist the Russian war machine were doing so for their dignity, their independence, their children, and the security of Europe. But the security of Europe, it increasingly looks like, will now become a concern of Europe alone. In his meeting with the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, Donald Trump pointed out to the limits of British military power with great relish.
You know, the British have been incredible soldiers, incredible military, and they can take care of themselves. But if they need help, I'll always be with the British, okay? I'll always be with them. But they don't need help. You look at their career, you have done very well over the years, haven't you?
We have. I'm very proud of our country. And but we've also always been there backing each other up. Between our two countries. That is why this is the greatest alliance for prosperity and security I think the world has ever seen. Whenever necessary, we've absolutely backed each other up, and that's at the core.
Could you take on Russia by yourselves?
Well,
the line taken by Donald Trump must feel like music on Vladimir Putin's ears. On the battlefield, Russia has intensified its attacks.
It's really a huge about-face in U.S. foreign policy, so it's hard to overstate the implications of that. For the world, it means that the United States is not aligning itself with Europe anymore, and that's unprecedented in recent times. Even as the UN had a vote on a resolution about peace in Ukraine, and the United States allied itself with Russia, North Korea, Belarus, in countries that did not vote with a majority-approved UN resolution to end the conflict in Ukraine and affirm support that Russia was to blame and that Russian troops should leave Ukraine immediately.
On the 26th of February, a Ukrainian military airport came under attack. Hundreds of drones have wreaked havoc on Ukraine's power infrastructure. From Kharkiv to Donetsk to Kherson and Zaporizhia, the Russian soldiers are on the move. An estimated 2,000 soldiers are being killed on either side every single week. At the St. Volodymyr's Church in Kiev, there are prayers being conducted for the war to come to an end soon.
No one else wants peace more than our entire pious Ukrainian people, who have been waging war against Russian aggression for 11 years and have been in the great agony of a major full-scale war for 3 years. The Ukrainian people want peace most of all. But we want peace in freedom. We want a just peace, the kind we had before Russia brutally, unprovoked and aggressively attacked us.
The Ukrainians want a peace that is just and a peace that brings with it freedom. But by following the dangled carrot of a NATO membership, Volodymyr Zelensky and Ukraine now find themselves in a predicament from which there is no easy way out. At least 6 people, including a prominent cleric, were killed and 16 others were injured in a suicide attack at an Islamic seminary in northwestern Pakistan on the 28th of February. The Darul Uloom Haqqaniya Seminary, infamous as the University of Jihad, has been a training ground for several key Taliban leaders, both past and present. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack, which was condemned by the Pakistani Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and President Asif Ali Zardari. Reportedly, the attacker, wearing an explosive-laden suicide vest, walked up to the top cleric, Hamidul Haq Haqqani, as he was leaving the mosque on the premises of the Darul Uloom Haqqaniya Seminary, and then detonated his suicide vest. Our next poll gets you more details.
The sprawling campus of Darul Uloom Haqqaniya Seminary in Akora Khattak, about 60 kilometers east of Peshawar, is an important seat of Islamic learning, home to roughly 4,000 students who are fed, clothed and educated for free. On Friday, Hamidul Haq Haqqani, who heads the Islamic Seminary as well as a faction of the Jamiat-e-Ulema Islam Party, was killed in a targeted suicide attack. Reportedly, the blast occurred after Friday prayers as people were gathering to greet Hamidul Haq Haqqani.
Maulana Hamidul Haq offered prayer. After offering the prayer, Maulana was leaving that a suicide bomber who did not apparently look like it stood up and reached Maulana Hamidul Haq. And then suddenly this blast took place. Around 8 people were killed on the spot.
57-year-old Hamidul Haq was the son of influential Pakistani cleric Samiul Haq Haqqani, who himself was assassinated in 2018. He was considered as the father of the Taliban for teaching the insurgent group's founder Mullah Omar at the same religious school. The founder of the feared Haqqani network, Jalaluddin Haqqani, also graduated from the same school. The Haqqani network is considered responsible for some of the worst attacks against the United States and NATO troops in Afghanistan before their eventual withdrawal in 2021. Reportedly, more than a dozen police officers were on duty guarding the mosque when the attack took place. In addition to the police officers, the seminary also had its own security. Students of the seminary who rushed to the attack site after hearing the loud explosion expressed anguish and sorrow over the death of their revered leader.
They are targeting our scholars and madrasas. We demand that the government arrest the killers of our leader.
As soon as I started my prayer, the blast took place. I have never seen such a powerful explosion before. People were crying and rushing outside. Our leader was martyred in this blast.
In neighboring Afghanistan, the Taliban government strongly condemned the attack and blamed it on the jihadist Islamic State group. Islamic State, a rival of the Taliban movement with which it shares a similar hardline Islamic ideology, has been responsible for several attacks against the Taliban government since it stormed back to power in 2021. The killing of an influential figure, often viewed as an important intermediary between Pakistan and the Taliban, ahead of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan, is bound to flare up tensions in a country which witnessed its deadliest year in a decade last year, with more than 1,600 deaths due to terror attacks.
At least 11 people were killed and around 60 others were wounded when twin explosions rocked the M23 rally on the 27th of February in Bukavu, the recently captured capital of the South Kivu province in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. Interestingly, this was in fact the first rally that was being held in Bukavu by the Rwanda-backed M23 rebel forces since seizing control of the city from the Congolese government forces earlier this month. The M23 rebels have accused the Congolese president Felix Tshisekedi's government of orchestrating the attacks, whereas Tshisekedi has blamed a foreign army that he said is operating in the east. Following the capture of Goma and Bukavu, the M23 rebel forces have continued their march in several directions across North and South Kivu without encountering any real resistance from the Congolese army. Our next report gets you more details as to what is happening in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
On Thursday morning, thousands of people had gathered in Independence Square in central Bukavu for a meeting with the leaders of the M23 rebel group. The unsuspecting residents were, however, in for a rude shock when two explosions hit the meeting, causing mayhem. Panic-stricken residents scrambled to load the wounded onto motorbikes and take them to hospitals. The rally was attended by Corneille Nangaa, the leader of the Congo River Alliance, which includes the M23, who issued an appeal asking people of Bukavu to remain calm and reassured them that consequences will follow.
The attack caused 11 deaths, including one woman, and investigations are ongoing. The perpetrator of the attack himself is believed to be among the dead. We are saying that this act will not be without consequences. The first consequence, as I am sure you can already tell, is to ensure that this never happens again, and that wherever the source of these threats lies, that these sources are eliminated.
Reportedly, Nangaa was leaving the platform where he had been speaking when the explosions took place. Ironically, he had promised the crowds barely moments earlier that rebels will bring safety and security to Bukavu, the second biggest city in eastern Congo. Since late January, in a lightning 3-week offensive, the M23 rebels have taken control of eastern Congo's main city Goma and seized the second largest city of Bukavu. Subsequent to the fall of Goma and Bukavu, the respective capitals of North and South Kivu provinces, the M23 has pressed further south, capturing Kamanyola on its way to Uvira, the third largest city in the Kivus. 500,000 people have been uprooted from their homes due to the fighting, worsening an already dire humanitarian crisis. Calls by the African Union and United Nations for a ceasefire and a withdrawal by rebels from areas under their control have proven ineffective so far. Congolese Prime Minister Judith Tuluka, addressing the United Nations Human Rights Council in Geneva on Monday, stressed the severity of the rapidly escalating conflict.
The security and humanitarian situation in the east of the Democratic Republic of the Congo has reached alarming levels. According to figures from the Ministry of Health, since January 2025, the conflict has caused, among other things, the death of more than 7,000 compatriots, including more than 2,500 bodies buried without being identified, and more than 1,500 bodies still lying around in morgues.
Worsening the conflict, the Ugandan forces have also reportedly entered the Democratic Republic of Congo and have seized Bunia,
the capital of Ituri province. Given the lightning offensive of the M23 rebels, the prospect of controlling the entirety of the 124,000 kilometers square of the mineral-rich Kivus looks increasingly in the realm of possibility. It's an enticing prospect for Rwanda, which would effectively gain a territory nearly 5 times its size. Interesting to note is the fact that M23 rebels this time are advancing faster than previous insurgencies from the east during the First and Second Congo Wars. With no breakthrough in sight in terms of ceasefire and both parties unwilling to budge from their position, will the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo undergo a territorial breakup?
Haiti, the most populous Caribbean nation, is also one of the poorest in the world. Since the assassination of the former president Jovenel Moïse in July 2021, the security situation in the impoverished nation has nosedived and is today comparable to a country at war. A staggering 200 gangs operate with impunity in the Port-au-Prince metropolitan area and are believed to be in control of as much as 80% of its territory. Recently, the gangs have targeted the previously peaceful communities in a bid to gain control of even more territory. On the 25th of February, before dawn, the armed criminal gangs launched an attack in what used to be a peaceful neighborhood of Delmas 30 in the capital city of Port-au-Prince. Our next report gets more details.
For the residents of Delmas 30, hitherto a peaceful neighborhood in the Haitian capital Port-au-Prince, the early hours of 25th February were filled with terror and anxiety. As gunfire echoed through the streets, panic-stricken civilians fled from their homes, some of them carrying mattresses on their heads, and one person seen pushing a corpse in a wheelbarrow. Several houses were set on fire by armed gangs, and though the number of people killed is yet to be ascertained, one local estimated the number of fatalities to be around 15. According to local media, 2 Haitian soldiers were among the victims.
Around 15 people died in Delmas 30. I have a friend who sells meat at the Delmas 30 market and they burnt him in front of his child. I know a woman who lived very close to me and they took her and her child and burned them. Spread the word, tell the Americans to give us a chance to save Haiti.
The pre-dawn attack is being blamed on the Vin and Sam gang coalition led by Jimmy Cherissier alias Barbecue, a former elite police officer. The Vin and Sam gang coalition, which harbors political ambitions, has claimed responsibility for other recent attacks. In the aftermath of the attack, a fearful local resident appealed to the notorious gang leader to put an end to the mayhem and terror of gangs.
Since 1 a.m., they've been attacking the population. I don't know what their plans are and what the population has done to them. Since 1 a.m., they've been attacking the population until now. They've been killing members of the population. I wanted to say this. Barbecue said that Viv Ansanam is a political party. What has the population done to them? The population is fleeing and they don't know where to go. When I look at that, I feel bad because you're a former policeman. You can't use other gangs to make the population flee. What have we done to you?
As well-funded and broadly allied armed gangs have expanded and cemented their control over much of the capital and surrounding areas, more than 1 million Haitians, about 10% of the population, are now internally displaced, an increase of 48% since September. Last year, the United Nations recorded more than 5,600 deaths linked to gang violence across Haiti, a 20% increase compared to 2023. On the 20th of February, the United Nations launched an appeal for more than $900 million to help the gang violence-ravaged country. The Kenyan-led multinational security support mission in Haiti since 2023 has so far proven ineffective. With no let-up in the gang violence, an impoverished nation of more than 11 million people taken hostage by an estimated 7 major gang coalitions is struggling to break free.
And with that, set up on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.